you just can't go and eat this stuff all the time. Sorry to break it to people.
Yeah.
I understand, well, moderation. Well, what's moderation, right? It's most people, what they think of as moderation is what's holding them back from being able to have a higher level of success with their health and wellness.
You come highly recommended from our mutual friend, Dr. Gabrielle Line, who's like, this guy is a G in the fitness space. You work with a lot of really amazing people, like household names. So yeah, I would love to do a deep dive, into your philosophy in terms of fitness and nutrition, and ultimately how you get these like normal human beings into superhero shape, which I think is so cool.
They are normal, right? And I think we forget that.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, that, I see them on the big screen all the time, but they're parents, they have, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends. I mean, they're dealing with the typical stuff that we deal with. I mean, in fact, I find it a bit more challenging to work with them because their schedules are so volatile, and at any second they could be on a plane, changing time zones, away from their family for 3 to 6 months. I mean, things happen, right? And I think that's why a big question I was always asked was it more difficult to work with celebrities or professional athletes? And I would always say celebrities, because the professional athlete, at least, they're exceptional at that one craft. Tom Brady knows how to throw a football. He knows the game of football. Sebastian Stan has to adapt to a different role every few months. He's got to, start training with a sword, then knives, then martial arts. And it's like, I've never done this. And
he was the guy in the Pamela and Tommy show, right?
He was.
Yeah,
right?
He was great.
And I mentioned him because he was just out here, and he's, one of those up and coming.
He's shirtless the whole show.
Yeah, it's so I met him when he was going on to this Broadway show, and he was just panicked. He was like, I gotta be naked, almost naked this entire show. And you can understand where that, level of anxiety can set in, if you're up there for 2 hours shirtless every night, like, you want to look good. So him and I connected, and I think he'll be the first one to tell you, I got him to relax a little bit and understand that this is a lifestyle, and, take a deep breath, and, you're going to look great no matter what. So,
yeah, I love that. So what's your process like when somebody comes to you, they've got to prepare for a role where they're going to be naked the whole show?
I always go through a screening process. For me, it's always about functionality first. So I want to make sure that the individual is moving a certain way. Like, you've got to, we're all athletes. And it doesn't do me any good if you look great, but you're jumping onto a horse in a specific scene and you blow your back out. So I think the first rule is always functionality. And that's going to come down to things like sleep. It's going to come down to things like recovery, movement, daily stress levels. Like, where is that at? I really believe the training's the easy part. We were talking about our buddy Ben Bruno earlier, who's an exceptional coach. I think the training is something that's always going to change. It's always going to evolve, and you're going to have your template in place. But a good coach is going to understand how to deviate away from that template when the individual needs it. And that could come down to just from a bad night's sleep. Or last night I was on a plane till about 2 a.m, New York time. Next thing you know, I'm on New York time, and I only slept 3 hours. I feel great, but you got to adjust your workouts today. You're not going for any max lifts, any PRs. You're going to a foreign gym where you don't really know the equipment. You're a little dehydrated. You're probably a little undernourished. So I think sometimes when we take the template and we think that that's how it's going to be, day in and day out for this long period of time, most of the time, you have to deviate from that. And I really learned that from working with professional golfers. So my brother was a professional golfer, turned amateur, and our first club in New York City was a golf fitness performance facility called Drive 495. And we signed the lease back in 2005. And I started writing these periodized programs for guys like Keegan Bradley that were a year long and 12 months. And then out of nowhere, one of them would be on a plane to Malaysia, and they'd be like throwing up in some airport and dehydrated for 3 days, and then playing golf in 110-degree weather. And suddenly that program's got to change. And 9 out of 10 times, anything I would write for a long period of time, we would have to kind of deviate, away from, and we'd have to call audibles and allow the individual to feel successful. So I believe in the template. I believe in the screening process. I believe with certain people diving into your hormone panel and looking at those sort of things. I think people need to crawl before we start diving and throwing all that information at them. But yeah, I think adapting to the individual day in and day out is really where the magic lies.
Yeah, and these people, like when people show up to your gym, they're probably not naive to exercise, right? Like an actor's probably like for every role getting in some degree of like doing some degree of like exercise tweaking, right?
Yeah, it's interesting on what level it is. I mean, one of them might just be, well, I just do classes, or, something specific where it's just all about heart rate, and their role might, entail them to approach it much differently. I think there's training and there's working out. Like, I think there's a time and place for both. Working out, like going to get a sweat and, moving and just clearing your mind a little bit. But training is for something specific, and you got to have a goal in mind when you're training. And I'm not diminishing working out. I'm not saying there's that it's a bad thing. I mean, just getting anyone off the couch and getting them moving with, proper movement is going to be better than sitting on the couch. But I like looking at how's our body moving as this program's being implemented. Are you feeling better? Are you looking better? Okay, then that's a good sign. Are you starting to look better, but your joints are hurting you? All right, we got to assess what's going on.
Do you have any simple like litmus tests that you use? Like, is it like getting up off the floor or?
Yeah, I would use a functional movement screening, just a very basic FMS. That's what trainers would use. And then I have a team of physical therapists that I work with. So at any point, if I found a red flag, they would go right to Dr. Charlie Weingroff or Kyle Balzer, one of my PTs, and then we would start looking at, all right, why did this person score this on the test? So, the FMS, I don't think anyone's going to say it's a foolproof program, but I think it gives the trainer some tools to be able to do their job and be able to notice, all right, there's a problem here. We have to include the medical.
Yeah. What about like injury proofing your clients for like potentially intense stunt work and stuff?
I call it resiliency. It's probably, when I say movement and functionality, it really comes down to resiliency. And it was funny. I was having this conversation with a couple tour players, professional golfers, and who hit the ball very far. And I was like, I don't really care if you hit the ball 330 yards or 320 yards. Like, you're already above tour average. I care about your body breaking down. So sometimes I think we're always chasing the dragon. We're always going for that extra yard. I'm using golf for an example. Or we're always going for that extra pound, where the reality is it is important when Ryan Reynolds is shooting Deadpool and that his body doesn't break down. Or Dave Harbour was a great example. He's in Stranger Things now. I don't know if you.
I love it. He's great.
Yeah, he's awesome. But he went. I met Dave years ago, and he's now working with another coach. I think I forgot the individual's name, but once I sold the club, I stopped taking on a lot of people. I'm sorry, when I exited the club, I stopped taking on a lot of people. But when I met David, I'm allowed to talk about this openly, but he struggled to pick up a kettlebell. He had a bad back. So he wore a prosthetic suit for Hellboy. So our job was to develop this level of resiliency. I wanted him underneath that suit being strong. And I was proud that, within that 9-week period of time that I had to train him, which is nothing, he was struggling to pick up a 24 kilogram kettlebell. And next thing you know, he pulled 400 pounds off the ground.
Wow.
I have a video of it. I could probably send it over to you. It's literally perfect flat back. And he was like, let's go more. Let's go more. I was like, no, you're done. Like, I'm not sending you to Bulgaria tomorrow with the potential of blowing your back out or something wrong happening. Like, I already proved to you that the strength we added in that period of time, and I'm proud of what you did, but now go shoot your film and make sure the production company's not ready to hang me. So, I think that's a problem too with professional athletes. It's like, what are we trying to do with them? There's always a cost of doing business, right? And there's always a risk, like if you put a bar on someone's back. So I think it's something you got to be really careful with any individual, but especially when it's their job.
Yeah. I mean, so he had low back issues and he was able to make it through wearing a 400-pound suit, which is like load bearing on the spine.
No. He deadlifted 400 pounds.
Oh, he deadlifted 400
So in that
pounds.
9-week period of time, he struggled to pick up a 24 kilogram kettlebell.
Wow.
And we rehabbed him to the point where he was able to pull, 400 pounds.
Dude, that's awesome.
And that was something I was proud of, but it wasn't about him taking his shirt off and looking a certain way. Not everyone is going to come in and need to look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club or Ryan Reynolds in one of his movies.
That's always like the prototypical best body, right? The Brad Pitt like Fight Club look.
I get that. I get that question, and I get Ryan's body the most. I think it's just be cool. I think it's because they have this level of coolness to them where most guys can relate to, or at least want to be like. So I think that's something that a lot of people strive for.
Now, are these guys like when wearing a t-shirt? They probably don't look all that big, right?
No,
they're just super lean.
It's funny. Hugh Jackman, so I prepped him for his first role in Wolverine right around the time when Australia came out. This had to be 14 years ago. And I'm forever grateful because he's given me so many people since then. But I remember when Hugh came in, he came off the Broadway show. I think it was called A Boy from Oz, probably weighed $175.
Wow. At
6'1", 6'2". And, over the next 9 months, the guy put on, 30, 35 pounds, not all muscle. Let's be clear. You can't do that naturally. Like, you're not going to put on 35 pounds of muscle in 7-8 months naturally. And, in the movie, he looked massive, but when he would come into the gym, he looked no bigger than me. The camera does things to people.
Are you on set with them?
Sometimes. What was the last set I was on? I went on Red Notice with Ryan down in Atlanta. So I went on Red Notice with him and for a couple of days and met Dwayne Johnson, who's trained at my gym a couple of times. By the way, lovely guy, really, really nice. I don't know if you've ever met him, but just the opportunity to get there sometimes. I don't really like going, to be honest, because I always feel like I'm getting in someone's way. And when the set's running, it's running. Like there's no training going on. Like you're sitting in the trailer. So I would come down, and check on them and, have some food and get a couple workouts in and just give them a hug type of thing. That's what I've been dealing with. I'm never really traveling with them anymore.
That's so cool. I'm trying to think if I've ever been on like a live movie set. I've been on plenty of like TV show sets, but like daytime
cool.
TV. Yeah.
That's cool. I don't know if I've ever done that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've done
the daytime TV stuff?
No.
That's a party. Because the energy is so high, usually there's like a live studio audience. It's much different probably than like a closed set, like when they're shooting at one of these like narrative shows.
We'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I have to check it out. How do you balance like when you're training these people, like between, building functional strength and building the muscles that are going to look good on camera?
Yeah, I mean, again, I always feel like the first goal has to be that functional strength. It's living in this world of performance physique. It's like you are going after a little bit of what bodybuilders are like. In a way, they are bodybuilding, right? Even though they're not competing, they're still bodybuilding, but they have to perform like an athlete. So I don't think you're ever going to become world class in one area. Like none of them are going to be able to get up at the Olympia this week and compete. Like they would get crushed. On the other hand, they wouldn't be able to perform on a NFL football field. They don't, but they're becoming, in a way, which is ironic because you're training to be superheroes, but you need to train them to almost be like the jack of all trades.
Yeah.
You need them, even though they're not really a superhero. I mean, they're acting. You need them to be able to adapt to any type of environment. You need them to be able to just establish that level of resiliency. And I think that's where things get interesting. I think that's where there needs to be variability in the programming, but not too much. It's not like every week the program's changing. We'll commit to something for 4 to 6 week blocks. And I find after that, people start getting bored also.
Yeah.
And you want to keep them away from boredom. You want them to be excited about their training. I think that's important also.
Well, I want my listeners to be able to get into superhero fighting shape. And so like, are there any maybe muscle groups that you think tend to be overlooked by your average person that you place more emphasis on?
100%. Lower body, I think, is the biggest. I mean, I get this all the time. Well, I run or I do cardio. It's when you strength train, this. It's your body, the ability to burn fat is going to increase with more muscle. The biggest complaint by most women are, well, I don't want to get bigger. And I'm like, all right, well, tell that to Blake Lively, tell it to Emily Blunt. Cindy Crawford does a lot of resistance training. These women are strong women. They have that level of resiliency, but they also understand how hard it is to put muscle on. As a natural athlete, for you to put, if you put 5 to 10 pounds of muscle on a year naturally, I think that's exceptional.
Yeah.
Like that's fantastic. I had a woman who was one of my challengers this year who lost 8 pounds of fat, but put on 9 pounds of muscle according to her DEXA scan. Now DEXAs aren't 100% accurate, but it was a nice gauge. To have that type of swing, I think is exceptional. Now, if you looked at her on her scale, oh, well, she gained a pound. Most women would be pulling their hair out over that. But the reality is we just got rid of 8 pounds of fat and put on 9 pounds of muscle in 12 months.
Wow.
Like if you can give that type of return on anyone, I'm taking it.
That's
so
amazing.
I think it is. Yeah, you got to live in both worlds. And I think when designing a program, the beginning of the program, I like to refer to as practice. Like we're coming in, we're doing our basic foam rolling tissue work, and then we're going through, call it what you want. Everyone's calling it something different, whether it's prehab or dynamic warm up or mobility. It's just, practice is my way of looking at the individual and saying, what are things we need to work on? So if you're really struggling in thoracic rotation, but not extension, I might mix more thoracic rotation into the programming. If your hips are locked up, we're going to mix hips in there, right? If it's a woman who is incredibly flexible, right? And they're able to get into positions, but they're lacking in stability, I might just get them hang from a pull-up bar, and just create that stability. So I think having that targeted warm-up is really important. I think it's going to get their heart rate up, but I think we're also going to work on inefficiencies in how the body's moving. Once we clear that up, and I like to put that into about 15 to 20 minutes of the program, then roughly 40 minutes, we're going in with what we need to go in with, whether that's strength training or If it's more work capacity, like circuit training, maybe the time's dropping a little bit because we're running around a lot quicker. So I like training different energy systems, and I think it's fun to do different types of programs depending on what the individual's training for, but it is individualistic.
Interesting. What's your philosophy with regard to warming up?
Yeah, I think that practice, right? Like what I was just talking about with the practice, that is part of the warm up. So if I'm taking form, let's use you for an example. So let's see that during our screening that there's a couple of moves that you're really struggling with. Let's say you can't touch your toes, or let's say that, your glutes inhibited, or, you have no external rotation in the shoulder. I'm going to start mixing those movements into your warm up to see if we can start cleaning up the way that you move. And while we're doing that, your heart rate's going to start elevating and you're going to start sweating a little bit. And it's probably get the same effects as you would if you were walking on a treadmill or a bike, but now we're actually improving the way that we move. So I really like calling it practice, and I like going into someone's session and trying to make it purposeful. I don't want to just stick someone on the treadmill and be like, all right, walk for 10 minutes and get your heart rate up and then we're ready to go. In my opinion, heart rate wise, they're probably ready to go. Their body temperature might be up, but their movement might not be where I want it to be.
Interesting. Do you have to because I feel like there's this idea that you've got to activate certain muscle groups before you go in and actually do the work sets. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, right now, you and I are sitting, right? Yeah. So the example I like to give is if we're to take our hands and we're to sit on our fists right now for the next 2 hours, you're going to get up. You're not going to be able to move your fingers. You're going to lose that, that ability to, control your fingers, that loss of dexterity. So that's happening with our glutes. So glute activation is a term that some people like, some people dislike. I don't mind it as much because it's just my way of saying, no, we want to get them to fire. We want to wake them up a little bit. You've been sitting, you've been lethargic, you've been in this kyphotic position where you're hunched forward, you're on your computer, and now we got to kind of get things to turn on. You get some purists like, whoa, glutes don't turn off. If glutes turned off, you would collapse. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, but they are kind of going to sleep in a way. So when certain areas of the body go to sleep, other areas will take over. For instance, like the elbow, and I'm not a physical therapist, by the way. I want to be very clear. I've worked at plenty, but a lot of people come in with tendonitis in their elbow, right? Like, oh, well, I play golf or I throw. It's not always an issue stemming from the elbow, even though we feel the issue there. A lot of times it could be the shoulder. So I always like to say X doesn't always mark the spot. The body really responds from a joint by joint approach. The toes affect the feet, which affect the ankle, which affect the knees, the hips, the low back, the mid back, the shoulder, the C-spine, all that stuff is all going to get affected from joint by joint. So we want to make sure all our joints are moving properly, and we want to make sure that they're activated and they're primed and they're lubricated. So we have that level of resiliency that you and I talk about.
Yeah, it's so important. I injured a couple of years ago my lower back by plunging into, they weren't even super heavy, but back squats.
Yeah,
with a barbell.
Sure.
Hadn't warmed up at all. Hadn't worked on any glute activation. I was actually at the gym, not even to do legs. I was there for back day, and I was working out with a friend who was doing legs, and he had 240. He had a 45 on each side of the bar, and was like, Max, just do a set. And I don't know why I agreed to go to plunge head first into doing them, but I knew on the first rep that I
something was up.
Something was up, that I screwed something up, and my back has never been the same since. Now when when I work, when I even give it 10 minutes of glute activation beforehand, I feel so much better.
It happens to everyone. So don't feel bad. I mean, knock on wood, all my injuries have been contact injuries, but a few weeks ago, the same thing happened. I was doing trap bar RDLs. My team showed up. I was sitting in front of the computer for an hour. My buddy's like, oh, we got to get moving. I got to be out of here at a certain time. I kind of squashed most of my practice warm-up, call it what you want, and started trap bar deadlifting. And the next thing you know, you're adding plates. And then out of nowhere, you're feeling something like, all right, this doesn't feel right. And I backed off, but it's going to happen. The human body's like a NASCAR, right? It's like racing around the track. I don't care how well it's running. You got to pit. You got to change tires. Things are going to happen. There's a cost of doing business. Your body sometimes is just going to respond negatively. You're going to be on a flight. You're going to be dehydrated. You're going to get into a fight with someone at work or your spouse or whatever it is. Stress is a killer. And then, excuse my language, shit happens.
Yeah,
it really is. It's a truth.
It reminds you real quick that you're not a superhero.
No, it is because it's so real, right? And there's not one human being. Like I've watched certain people on the internet. I watched Dwayne Johnson on his social media. He's got a very entertaining social media. I see him doing certain movements. Like I'm like, all right, there's a reason why he's doing that. Like why is he belt squatting all the time? Like something might be going on. Like there's a reason why he's doing some of the same movements he's doing. And it's probably because he's got, specific issues from football, years of wear and tear, years of training that are just catching up on him. Me, there's a little bit of an ego involved where when there's an issue with an individual, I'm like, well, why? Like, why is your back still bothering you? Now, like right when you said that, I'm like, like I'd want to start assigning people on you. I'd want to start looking into it and finding out, why is this happening? What can we start adding into your routine that could potentially fix this?
Yeah.
Potentially. I'm not saying that there's always a guarantee, but are there things that we can do to kind of eliminate those issues?
What are some of the more common sources of injuries in with regard to like the gym? Is it like specific exercises?
Yeah, I think, even getting into a lot of the circuit training. I'm not even going to say CrossFit. I'm just going to say circuit training. CrossFit is circuit training, right? So when someone asks me about CrossFit, it's like asking me, what do you think of restaurants? I'm like, well, there's good restaurants and there's bad restaurants, right? It's just a form of circuit training. When we're taking movements that are highly technical, like Olympic lifting, and we're doing that for time or high reps, one of the lead causes in form breakdown is fatigue. So when you're taking a movement like a snatch and you're doing that for 20 reps, fatigue's going to set in. I don't care what type of athlete you are. You're going to get tired. Unless you're an Olympic lifter, your form's probably going to start diminishing. And when we start loading dysfunction, that's when injuries happen. So what do I see? I see a lot of back. I see shoulders. I see elbows. I see knees. I see all the joints, right? Because we're putting ourselves into positions that a lot of us haven't earned the right to be in.
Yeah.
Under load. Now, if you're body weight and you're doing a body weight squat, and you're working on your squat mechanics are terrible, but we're working on it body weight with your body weight, I'm okay with that. But once we start throwing a bar on dysfunction, then we're going to have a big problem.
Yeah. Are squats a common source?
It is, but there's so many different ways to squat, right? So like you said, back squats. Like I personally love back squatting. I haven't had a client of mine back squat in 10 plus years.
Interesting. Well, if you love it so much, why not?
Well, I can do it. And it's just something that I've had in my head that I always feel great doing it. But most people can't move that way to where the juice is worth the squeeze.
Interesting.
So like I might get a bar in front of them on a front squat. And if they don't have that type of shoulder mobility, I might getting them doing like more of a bodybuilder hold, which is cross arms. I can't do it here. Cross arms here. Or goblet squats are probably one of my favorite ways to have people squat. So
that's how I do it. That's how I squat.
Phenomenal. Once someone exhausts a goblet squat, because you can go heavy, but if you put a 48 kilogram kettlebell in someone's hand, which is 108 pounds, and you have them nail sets of goblet squats, well, then let's go into a double kettlebell squat. And then once you're able to start doing that, then I think we could start transitioning to a bar. If you're that strong where you're holding double 48s in each hand, which is, almost it's like 220 pounds, but it feels like 500 pounds. When you have two 48s in your hands here, it's like, it's insane. But I just think that there's much safer decisions to make. Split squatting till you're blue in the face. Like for most people, and then you get into your lunge patterns and specific things that I think even if you stayed away from back squatting and you worked on those things, you'd probably come back to back squatting one day and still be really strong at it.
Interesting. My friend Kevin Bass, who I've had on the podcast recently, he generated some controversy on social media where he made the argument that that the fitness community, at least on social media, does a great disservice to the public by constantly promoting these the big three movements, I think he specifically was focused on squats and deadlifts without offering the appropriate caveats.
Yeah.
That these are moves that are highly technical and they're not always portrayed as such.
I agree with him.
And that a lot of people actually get injured from improperly doing squats and deadlifts.
I think most influencers, I think there's coaches and there's influencers. I think a coach is someone who's coached on the floor for years. I think an influencer is someone who's showing what works for them. But I even feel like the influencer is doing people an injustice by not explaining, listen, this is what works for me. Or if I put a back squat video up, I'm just saying most people, by the way, I would not have back squat. Let me be very clear here. And these are some great variations to the back squat if it feels uncomfortable. Like we should feel better from our training. But a lot of times people, this is bothering me, that's bothering me. When you see this laundry list of things add up, then I think you need to assess what you've been doing.
Yeah. What about when it comes time to shoot? How do you balance the, being able to keep training up with the very real fact that training sometimes often leads to muscle soreness the next day and just makes you feel like less capable, right?
Yeah. I mean, so soreness, it's funny. So training through soreness is something I don't really mind.
Interesting.
I feel like if you do it over and over and over and over, that's something that, that might be a sign that you're just not recovering enough, or maybe there's so much variability in your program that your body's just not adapting. I like assigning movements to people, and I like seeing them get better over time without this weekly level of deviation. Oh, we did this week. Let's do this next week. It's like, I don't really feel like you're going to get so much better at anything. And I think there's so much variability that you will be sore all the time. Like my legs to this day, like I can get crazy sore. It's like,
Same.
this stuff doesn't get easy. This stuff doesn't get easier, man. It does not. I mean, I'm doing this 25 years. Like, like every session is hard. Like it doesn't get easy. But yeah, I mean, it's just programming you got to be careful with.
Oftentimes, like after leg day, I wonder why people like my lower body gets so sore that it just makes life miserable for the 48 hours after like a good leg day. Yeah. I'm like, I thought this was supposed to make me feel like better, and then I remind myself that it's like you got to get over that 48-hour hump, and then your legs actually feel, then there's like the strength and whatever that you gain.
A nice little trick too is if you threw in some nice static stretching before bed, I mean, you're going to see an improvement in sleep quality. You'll see an improvement in soreness. You'll wake up the next day, you'll be bouncing out of bed a little bit quicker. And I really would prefer people to take more of the micro stretching approach, which is very light, like on a scale of 1 to 10, you're probably looking at like a 3 or 4. Just really kind of breathing, not straining, relaxing into the stretch. Most people, I think, are static stretching too intensely. And I think they're getting their body to turn a little bit more sympathetic, right? Like they're at a point where they should be going parasympathetic and relaxing. I think they're getting their body to lock up a little bit. And I've seen issues occur when people are stretching really intensely to where they're just always, under that type of strain. So I would recommend someone 5 to 10 minutes a night after, a hard session, especially legs, like go through some nice hamstring and quad stretching and hip flexor stretching and just keep it playful and active. Your dogs are in the room, watch TV with the family, whatever it is. But 10 out of 10 times I see an improvement on my sleep quality. So I'll see my deep sleep improve. Wow. I'll see my restfulness improve. And always I wake up the next day feeling less sore.
And you measure your sleep, right? Like we were talking offline about the Oura ring.
Yeah. I've been working with Oura for 4 years and it's been my favorite tracker. And it was a really easy partnership for me because I was wearing it anyway. So when they wanted to bring me aboard, I'm like, okay, great. That's kind of how I do partnerships. Like I have to love the product first and I have to be using the product. So I got really lucky with them, but this really enables me to look at trends. And even right now, I just got a new mattress from a company called Brightbed, giving them a little shout out. But now over the next couple months, I'm going to be able to compare my trends from how I slept in, maybe late December, January to how I was sleeping on my old mattress in October, November, but again, looking at trends, I'm in California right now. I'm going to come back. I'm going to be jet lagged for a few days. Then we're going into the holidays. You really need to spend time looking at trends because there's so many variables, as you know, that can affect all that feedback that we're getting.
Yeah, totally. Do you try to get your clients to track their sleep?
If they're into it, I always try and take a minimalistic approach at first. Great story. I had a guy come to me a few years ago and he said, I want to see my top 2 abs. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, it's the most bizarre request I've ever heard. Took his shirt off. He's in his mid 40s, muscular. Well, let's look at your nutrition. And I basically just cut everything in half. The alcohol in half. His training was pretty good. Cut out the desserts more than half, but he still gave him a little bit during the week. We didn't eliminate everything. And I'm telling the story because people are going into the New Year's. It's like, watch out with these resolutions. And he came back to me almost a month later. He took his shirt off. You could see his top 2 abs. Wow. And he looked at me and he says, what's next? And that was the magic, right? I wasn't assigning him my A program. I wasn't saying this is what I do or this is what so-and-so does. Most people aren't going to latch onto that. Like find a way to show the client some success, build that trust, build their willingness to want to improve and do this stuff, right? Like these people, they want it, right? Like they want to get to the gym and they want to wake up every day and be hungry for this, but that's got to be earned over time. And that's got to be, I think that's given from seeing results.
Yeah. So wait, what did you do again? He cut out the alcohol.
Oh my God. Yeah. So he was probably having cocktails 3-4 nights a week. So we cut him down to like 1.
Alcohol is like a big problem.
horrible.
Yeah. People don't realize it's like almost as caloric as pure fat on a gram for gram basis.
Do you drink?
I drink like very seldom. Like most of my friends, like most of my people who are not my close friends think that I don't drink because that's how rarely I drink. But I do occasionally. I'll have like a glass of wine or, tequila, like a handful of times a month, if that.
I can't do tequila. If I do hard stuff, I'm like out of my mind. I'll be hammered in 2-3 drinks, like doing stupid stuff. But like I like like good beers, like IPAs or lagers or something like out of a tap. Or when we go to Vermont with my kids and we're going to go snowboarding with them, my wife and I'll have like 1 or 2. But that's the extent of it. Yeah. But I'll go 4, 5, 6 months without having a drink, and
Same.
I don't care.
Yeah, I probably even overstated it by saying a few times a month. Like it's literally like. It's rare, but I'm not dogmatic about it. Like if I'm at dinner with somebody and they're having a glass of wine and I want to imbibe, like I go for it.
Yeah. It's like a glass of wine's fine. Yeah. But most people are they're really hung up on the calories. I'm more hung up on the fact that it's alcohol, right? Yeah. Well, Don, what do you drink when you go out? I'm like, well, if I'm drinking every 4 or 5 months, I don't care. I'll drink scotch. I'll drink gasoline. Like, what are you serving? Like, it is what it is. Like, honestly, I'm not sitting there going, well, this has gluten or this is clear. This isn't clear. Like, if I'm going out and they're serving great mojitos, like I'll have a mojito. Like, I don't care so much about it. Like, we have to pay attention to the fact that it's alcohol and that it will affect you hormonally. It will affect your sleep quality, and doing that over and over and over. Like, yeah, sleep is going to become a big problem.
So it affects recovery. Yeah,
that's right. I'm less concerned with how calorically dense it is, and I'm more concerned with the fact that it's going to mess your sleep up.
Interesting. I'm a big fan of James Bond, and it's in my head, it's always like how do I reconcile the fact that like he can do it all. He's in such good shape, but he drinks like a freaking fish.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he was smoking, right? Wasn't
OG? Yes, he was. Yeah, I don't remember like which actor. Like
Connery was. I mean, Connery had a cigarette here and there. Yeah, I mean, he was my favorite, by the way.
Was he?
Yeah. Who was yours?
I like Daniel Craig a lot because I'm kind of a recent fan, and I feel like the Daniel Craig movies were sufficiently modern and gritty for me to resonate with them. You know what I'm saying? Like they're a little bit too technically. Like inferior, like the earlier movies, and they get a little bit silly at times. Yeah. Like there's kind of like a Dark Knight grittiness to the Daniel Craig James Bond movies that to me like really resonated.
He was a little harder, right? I mean,
he was harder. Yeah, he was harder. He bled. Like he was like, he was they made him the most human, I think. Like that was the whole thing when they rebooted the James Bond series with Daniel Craig. Mm-hmm. Like that was the thing that they sought to really do a 180 on, because like the prior films really made James Bond seem like
a chauvinist, right? He really was. There was
that, but also like he seemed like almost omnipotent, like a superhero. But the Daniel Craig one, like they were like, okay, well, he's a real person. He doesn't have any superpowers. He's gonna bleed. He's not necessarily stronger or tougher than his opponents, but he's like more resilient, right? He's more he doesn't give up. And so I just thought it was like a much more relatable version of it. And they took out the smoking, because I feel like smoking also, it's like a time period thing. Like people don't, it's like, but still the alcohol is always there. I feel like the alcohol is always going to be part of that.
There was, I mean, God, I remember the entire Bond run. I mean, my father got me into Connery, but he got me into Connery after I was watching Roger Moore. So I remember watching Roger Moore and seeing pretty much everything he did and thinking that was James Bond. And my father was like, no, that's not James Bond. My father's 77. My dad's like, James Bond, Sean Connery. So I went back and I started watching and I was like, all right, I get it. Even for a young kid at the time, to go back and look at, episodes like Dr. No. And
it's interesting because we're probably around the same age.
I'm 45.
45. Okay. So I'm 40. So when I was like growing up, we had like who was it? Like Pierce Brosnan. He was the Bond.
Yeah. I don't know why. Sometimes you're just introduced to certain things. Or I remember being on vacation and watching, one of the Bonds with Roger Moore and just kind of getting hooked on it. But no one refers to Bond as Roger Moore. It's just, but that's still one of my guys I remember watching.
Yeah, it's interesting. I should go back and like try to watch all the old ones, but they're just too like, because I'm also like a cinemaphile. Like I like high quality filmmaking. It's hard for me to suspend disbelief enough to like get into, to like immerse myself into those earlier films. Like, but yeah.
It is cool though to see the gadgets, because I still think the gadgets back then hold up.
Yeah.
Like they're still pulling things out and you're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And this is, 50, 60 years ago, still holding up. So
one super interesting thing that I found recently in the literature, there was like this study that I stumbled upon that found that about 220 calories worth of protein and fiber actually before drinking reduced bioavailability of the alcohol.
Oh, I got to write that down.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
Cool.
I mean, there's like this advice that's I feel like fairly well known to drink or to eat with your booze.
Mm-hmm.
But this study wanted to see like, okay, what's the lowest amount of calories that we can give somebody, and what's the like macronutrient combination more specifically that actually can reduce. And I never thought about alcohol in terms of bioavailability, but what this study found was about 220 calories worth of protein and fiber reduced the bioavailability of the alcohol to the point that the peak blood alcohol concentration was lower, and the area under the curve for blood alcohol was lower over like a 90-minute period or something like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's also setting people up for success. They're going to do it.
Yeah.
Like you can't go around, don't drink. Like, all right, it's to each his own, right? I'm trying to minimize damage. I'm really trying to get people not to wake up with hangovers. Like it's, we're not productive. Our sleep quality is garbage. Like there's just any information like that I think that you can put in your back pocket for that night, do it. Because listen, I'm still going to have that night once in a blue moon. It's still going to happen.
Always,
and I wake up the next day and I'm like, oh my God, this is why I don't do it anymore. Right. But it's fun in the moment.
I think like a big key is to make sure that you're sober by the time you go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like I've never felt bad the next day when I've drank alcohol during the day. Right? Like day drinking usually doesn't lead to a hangover the next day. It's like drinking at night and then letting that affect my sleep.
Right.
That leads to me feeling
I think we're
shitty.
dehydrated. I mean, there's little things that I would have someone do, like putting like pinches of like pink salt in their water before going to bed, or
that's smart.
Certain things like that. And always having them, have a meal before going to dinner. Like, why would I do that? I'm going to dinner. I'm like, yeah, but you're like having a snack at 3:00 and you're eating your last big meal at 12 and you're holding off for 7:00. And then by then, like you're having your vodka, your famished, you're ripping open the bread, and your food choices are just, listen, it's all about satiation, right? Like it's all about maintaining blood sugar levels. You're never going to make a bad food decision if someone's sitting there cooking the right balance of macro and micronutrients. Like you're going to feel full. And you know what I'm talking about. You know, those days where you eat really well and you've gotten enough food in, or maybe had an extra meal and the evening's coming around, or maybe someone's passing around dessert. You're just not in the mood for it, right? But people look at that like, oh, I'm having more calories. I'm having too many calories. Or no, you're having the right calories.
Yeah.
Calories are energy. People forget. That's our fuel. That's our gasoline. It's very simple.
Yeah. You need energy.
Right.
How do your clients typically deal with, like, how do they handle typically like alcohol, and are they pretty like buttoned up? I mean, because usually they see you when there's a role that's looming,
right?
Or like a performance that they have to give, or do they tend to be more lax?
No, I mean, I'm a little spoiled in that sense, because really the only people I'm working with now are when they're getting ready for a movie role, and they're very like, they have families, they've been around the block already. Like they're not too concerned with partying. They have a glass of wine once in a while, that's fine. And to be honest with you, I'm cool with it. I mean, unless someone's getting on, stage at the Olympia, or, even getting ready for movies, sometimes I think people go so extreme. And you even hear like, who was talking the other day, like Zac Efron. I think it was Zac Efron. He was talking about how when he prepped for a role, like how unhealthy it was. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really have to be that way. Like I've I've been on over a dozen covers. Like I've been on 3 since 2018. I did the cover of Muscle and Fitness twice.
That's amazing.
Actually, one was last year. I think it was their yearly issue at Olympia last year. I was on the cover of. And I did that on 275 grams of protein, 300 grams of carbs, and 90 grams of fat a day. And it was just, but I was also consuming 500 grams of carbs a day. So I did go into a deficit, but I wasn't starving myself. And after my shoot that day, I had a hockey game that night. I went out and played hockey. I wasn't like at Cheesecake Factory, like eating myself into a stupor, or I didn't feel like that my energy level was crashing. I didn't do any like water. I didn't dehydrate my body, or I didn't pull carbs from my body. Like I wanted to go into those last 3 shoots. It was Men's Health and 2 Muscle and Fitnesses, with a high level of energy. And could someone get tighter? Sure, 100%. Like I was proud, I've always done it naturally, and my body I thought looked pretty decent, and and I did it in a very healthy way. So that's what I'm trying to promote. Like I'm trying to show a lot of these actors that, man, guys, first off, don't go to the needle, right? It's just, I know nothing about it. It's not something we know. We don't really know how our body's going to get affected from it. Do we really? Like I know now with TRT therapy, and I do believe that there is a positive place for this if it's assigned by a doctor who has a good reputation. And I still think there's a lot of holes around that. I think people are falling back, oh, my testosterone's low. I'm like, well, why is your testosterone low? I don't know. Well, you sleep 3 hours a night and you drink 5 nights a week. Like, why don't we fix that first? And why don't we see if we can restore these things naturally before we go the other route? And I just have a different, I buried my best friend back in 2010. He was a trainer. He was 10 years older than me. And he got hooked on testosterone and he just couldn't get off of it. And I saw his life decline over 8 to 10 years. I'm probably going to get slammed for saying this. Well, how do you know it was testosterone? Listen, when the autopsy comes back and the doctor shares with us that his testosterone was north of 3,000,
jeez,
that's too intense. But he couldn't get off of it. He literally, every time he got off of it, because his body wasn't producing anymore, he felt like shit.
Wow.
And he'd go have sex with a woman, and he just was like, nothing was happening. And like all these negative things were happening. And I just saw his health and energy level decline. So when you see someone abuse it like that and they go through something like that, you have a much different outlook on it than most people.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What's your, you mentioned do you typically eat around 275 grams of protein a day?
Roughly, like right now I'm in LA. I've had 2 meals today. So
what do you weigh?
215.
Oh, 215.
I'm 6'1".
So you're doing you're obviously doing well over a gram per pound body weight.
Yeah, I am. I'm doing about a gram. Comes out to about a gram and a quarter.
Wow.
1.2 to 1.25.
Have you played with like lower levels I
haven't really seen much of a difference.
Interesting.
But I to be honest with you, I could probably go down around a gram per pound and be fine. I also look at the 260 to 275 I'm consuming, and that's not all from animal protein. So if you remove all the plants and all the grains and all the fats that's contributing to that protein being that high, you're probably removing about 50 grams a day. So I'm probably down around that gram per pound when it comes to, animal protein. So I'm fine in that range. I get blood work all the time. Dr. Gabrielle is my doctor. I always give her, she's allowed to talk about my blood. She's always very proud of it. But yeah, listen, I keep an eye on this stuff. Yeah, I mean, most people with protein, that complete protein coming from animal protein is really more of what I pay attention to.
I just feel like one of the hurdles to eating that much protein is that protein is so satiating. That's one of the great things about protein. So how do you do it? Like, is it you utilizing protein shakes or what?
Well, you got to train yourself to eat like that. And I see this a lot with people who are like, well, I can't have breakfast. Well, why can't you have it? Well, I'm not hungry. I'm like, okay, well, you haven't eaten breakfast in 3, 4, 5 years, right? And I'm not against fasting at all. Like, I think there's a ton of science out on it. I think there's a lot of positives from it. But for someone trying to put muscle on, it's becoming challenging. If you're doing your typical intermittent fasting, 16 off, 8 hours on, now you got that 8-hour window to get all those calories in. It's tough. So you got to look at, consuming calories is what calories do you want to have, right? It's protein, carbs, and fats. That's basically it, right? I pay attention to metabolic flexibility. So carbs and fats are my energy source, and protein is my muscle building block. So I get my protein around where I want it to be. I get my carbs and fats around where I want it to be, and I'll play with those numbers depending on, my training, the time of year, what am I trying to do?
Yeah.
But I try not to keep everything the same all year long. I need that. I need to diversify it a bit. Even my body starts telling me after a while, if I'm doing 500-600 grams of carbs for months, and out of nowhere, I start craving a fat adapted diet. So I might drop the carbs for a small period of time and up the fats, which is something I don't promote to people. But again, like trying to utilize those different macronutrients, I think are important.
Interesting. Do you track or do you take like a more intuitive approach?
No, I track most of the time. So I use an app called Chronometer, which I love. So
Chronometer.
They don't even, it's funny, they don't even know how to pronounce it. It's a chronometer or chronometer. And they're like, oh, you can pronounce it both ways. So
wow.
That's, it was like MyFitnessPal's biggest competitor, but I just found that a lot of the data is much more accurate from what I found from MyFitnessPal. And
oh, interesting.
Yeah. Very, very cool. So
it tracks like calories, protein, like
everything.
Wow.
Everything. Micro and macro.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you recommend that your clients track as well?
So I like intuitive eating, but what I find with intuitive eating sometimes is, there are question marks. So I think you can turn around to an individual that's not training and not eating properly, and you get them to make better food choices. And, you use your palm, hand, fist, thumb to measure protein, carbs, fats, that I think is great. But after a certain period of time, if there's a lot of volatility in someone's nutrition, daily nutritional plan, sometimes it's tough to make change, and you really need to keep things a little bit monotonous if you're working with a bodybuilder or someone going for extreme body composition change.
Yeah.
You can't have too much volatility. Like I know for the average Joe, someone like you or I who's, living our life right now, like, if the macros get within range, I'm fine with that. But, you do need to lock things in. If you're going to be one of these guys or women competing on stage this week in Vegas, like you better make sure that you're pretty dialed in.
Yeah. Like if you have like a specific body composition goal, right?
Yeah.
If you know that you're in 3 weeks going to be in front of the camera, shirtless, running around, you're going to have to get a little bit more diligent.
You are. And in 3 weeks, it's tough. It's tough in 3 weeks to find out where someone needs to be. I need a few weeks to be able to determine where do those calories need to be, right? So there's like Chronometer offers a Mifflin calculator. If someone doesn't download Chronometer, you can just download a Mifflin calculator and it'll get you within range to where your protein, fats, and carbs need to be. So I like approaching people from 35% protein, 35% carbs, and then like 30% fat of your daily calories.
That's cool.
Then at that point, I like to manipulate them. I like to give about 2 weeks. And I say, listen, no cheats for 2 weeks. I need to see the body adjust. But normally what's happening is when someone's plugging in their calories, they're like, oh, this is way higher than I'm consuming. Then I like to take a reverse dieting approach. This is probably the thing.
What's that mean?
So this is what frustrates me the most in nutrition is that we're always led to believe that we have to be in this deficit, right? To change body composition. And what happens to a woman who's consuming 1,100 calories a day or 1,000 calories a day, which clearly for almost anyone is too little, right?
Yeah, it's like a stress on the body.
Stress
at the very
on the
least.
body. And then your metabolism in time starts in a way adjusting, right? It's our body's a very smart car. It's going to recognize the gasoline that comes in. And it's going to say, all right, this is the trip for this amount of gas. This is the trip I can do today. This is how far I can drive. That's basically what it's saying. So in time, as those calories drop, your body, in a way, the energy is going to start dropping because it's saying, whoa, I don't have a lot to burn. I'm going to go into hibernation mode. So what reverse dieting is, it's a term that was, I think, really brought into bodybuilding, where after their contest, you slowly start bringing their calories back up, but slowly. So for example, if a woman comes to me and she's consuming 1,200 calories a day, but she should be at 2,200, there's no way I'm bumping her 1,000 calories tomorrow. But what I might do is I might take 5 weeks and I might bump it 200 calories a week. And I might give her a week. All right, one week here. Well, what's going to happen? Am I going to gain weight? You might gain a pound or two of water. All right, let's just keep an eye on it. Let's see how you're feeling. And in a few weeks in, as we start increasing this, well, how are you feeling? Don, it's funny. My energy level's better.
Wow.
Right? My sleep's improved. You know what? I haven't gained weight. My pants are actually fitting me better. This is right. And so I've done this. I have a challenger community right now with almost 10,000 people. And I bring on, Dr. Dwayne Jackson, Dr. Gabrielle Line. I bring on Adam Ross, who's our nutritionist. And we have to take this approach with many people because they're starving themselves. And I think what I like to do is reverse diet them to where I get them to their total daily energy expenditure, which is the amount of calories they need a day. This is like their break even. And I like keeping them there for a few weeks now and just seeing if the body acclimates and what happens and the changes it makes. And most of the time it's positive. Now, there are cases where there's a woman who's a part of my community right now where Dr. Jackson has to bring her onto a somewhat of like a revised ketogenic diet or a fat adapted diet. Sometimes people just aren't going to process nutrition the way that you and I process it, or maybe they have specific food intolerances or things that we have to adjust and adapt to. But that's what makes this so interesting. But I think a big problem is if you're one of these people, if you're listening to this, if you're one of these people who have been starving themselves with calories and you're down in that, like that reverse dieting approach might be something. Meet with a nutritionist, meet with a professional and have them guide you on it and talk to them about it. And then, make that determination. Do I need to start bumping my calories up? And most of them aren't seeing results anyway, right? From being in that deficit.
Yeah.
Think about it. Well, I'm only consuming 1,100 a day. I'm like, well, where are you going to go? You want to drop it to 800? Like, what are you going to do? Like, have you seen any results? And they're like, no. I'm like, so you have to try this. Like, so it gets to a point where we kind of beat it in their head, like give this a shot. And most of the time it works out.
It's interesting. I encountered a couple of weeks ago, like a fan of the show who said something to that effect to me, like they had brought their calories down so low and they weren't losing any weight. This would probably be something that they would benefit from, right? Actually, but like starting to bring them back up. probably for many reasons, but for one is that it will ramp your metabolism back up.
Yeah, 100%. I think you got to be patient though. And I think it's math. You can't jump at 1,000 calories overnight. Or if you're not having breakfast and you're eating one meal a day, like the fact that, oh, tomorrow wake up and have breakfast and lunch. Sure, it's that easy. Like they're not hungry. Like, what do you do? Right? You got to start implementing little things in. So the other day I had a woman who never had breakfast. I'm like, listen, can you do me a favor? Can you wake up and have one egg? She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, one egg and like 5 berries. Seriously? I'm like, yeah, seriously, just do that. And then she's doing it for a week. How you feeling? I'm not that full anymore. I said, great.
Oh.
Can we add a second egg? Now we're at 12 grams of protein. Like, can you add that? She's like, yeah, no problem. See what we have to do over time. It's that minimalistic approach, but everyone's going to their A game all the time or trying to get well, so-and-so does this, so I should be doing that. This is what's going to happen in a few weeks. People are going to wake up Jan 1. They're going to set a goal that's not attainable. It's the same thing every year. I've seen it every year for 25 years. They set these goals, they're not attainable, and they end up discouraging themselves, 10, 12 days in, and then they fall off. And
I think people forget how adaptable the body is. And it adapts sometimes. The adaptations that the body makes are sometimes at odds with your goals, but you just have to kind of think through the lens of evolution. Like once you start dramatically depriving your body of calories, like your body doesn't want to, your biology doesn't want to starve to death, right?
Right.
So there are adaptations that the body undergoes to make it a more efficient calorie burner, which translated means it's going to burn fewer calories over time, which means that it's going to reduce the likelihood that you're going to starve to death because the body thinks that that's probably what's going to happen unless it undergoes those adaptations.
100%. And imagine making those calories powerful now, right? With micronutrients, right? Imagine if the diet wasn't white rice and chicken breasts, right? Food's dead. Like there's nothing powerful in that. Imagine now circulating your foods or getting different vegetables and different fruits in there. And out of nowhere, the vitamins and the minerals and the micronutrients are really just working on your internal power plant. And then internally things are getting strong.
Yeah.
So externally things are going to look better. Like this is the approach we need to take. I just think it needs to be earned over time. You just can't wake up and say, oh, I'm going to do this. And you do this. You gotta practice these sort of things and you got to expect to fall off, right? There's never been a human being that's been perfect with this.
No.
There's never been someone that's gone to the gym and gone 100% every time or weighed out every one of their calories or, haven't come on, like we're all like, this is really about adapting to the environment I'm in this week. I'm not home. I don't have access to my food. Okay. Like doing the best I can. Like I stopped at Hugo's earlier and I had an omelet.
Did you have the Bruno scramble?
No, I did not, but I have had that. And it's delicious, by the way. I wanted to ask them if they knew Ben.
Yeah, they do know.
They do.
Ben Bruno, guest on the show, another great trainer.
Great coach.
Great guy. He's got at Hugo's in West Hollywood. He's got 3 things on the menu there. It's insane.
He's there like every day.
Yeah.
But Ben's one of those coaches now that understands that every person, it's not the same formula for everyone. It's just he finds those triggers and he finds how to emotionally grab them. And then, the rest, I think the program part's really easy, actually.
Yeah. A lot of people listening to this probably are going to be in the mindset of thinking about like New Year's resolutions, that whole like New Year, New You thing that happens. And of course, it's a concept that's like perpetuated by like the media. But like for people who are looking to, in 2023, shift their body composition to a healthier state, what are some ways to integrate healthier habits that are going to be sustainable?
100%. It's a great question. I wouldn't do it all at once. I would take, let's say this, if there's 12 things you wanted to improve next year, 12, it's a lot, right? Take one a month. Instead of turning around and saying, oh, I'm going to cut desserts and processed foods and alcohol, and I'm going to add water, and you're throwing all this stuff on your plate, where if you're not successful at we need to establish some habits. So I would turn around, I don't know, choose water first. All right, I'm going to start hydrating January. I'm going to hit half my body weight in ounces, whether you believe in that or not. That's still around the range. It's a good range to be in. Half my body weight in ounces. I'm going to spend the next 4 weeks just being great at that till it's mindless. And in the second month, you know what? I'm been eating desserts 5 nights a week, and I'm going to have it 1 night a week now. I'm not even going to fully eliminate that. Imagine going from having something 365 days a year to 52 times a year.
Yeah.
We're not eliminating that, but that's an improvement. Like you start making those improvements, your body goes in the right direction. Because what are we all looking? We all have the same goals, I think. Like we all want higher levels of energy. We want to look better naked. We want to feel better about ourselves, right? I mean, we want to be happy. It really is like, it's really what the goal is for all of us, right?
100%.
So if we can just start implementing one little change month by month, I really think that things are going to stick. And if we understand that when you deviate away from that, when, not if, like very rarely is someone giving some, you have an alcohol problem, you got to give it up for life. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about like, I love pizza and I'm going to give up pizza. I'm not having pizza next year. Like, why? Like, why do you have to do that? Like, you can still have it once in a while. But I think we can't have our cake and eat it too every day. And I think you even saw with some of the tabloids lately, it's been getting annoying. Like they've been empowering, like, F this, have the cake. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like this person's 100 pounds overweight. Why are you telling them to have
It's so irresponsible.
It's irresponsible, but it's them trying to feel empowered. It's them it's all this reverse mind. I'm not gonna use the word.
No, it's bad. It's bad, man. I mean, I think the, the health at any size movement has been really harmful. I think like you should love and embrace your body at any size, of course, right? I think we need to realize that beauty is completely subjective, but that when it comes to health, there are some objective biomarkers that are well known to be promotive of health and associated with reduced risk for disease. And being obese is not one of those, check marks for good health. Like it's just not.
It's not. I've had a couple of people I've worked with that were morbidly obese. I had one woman that I'm still helping out. She was 872 pounds.
Oh my God.
And we, over the last 6, 7, and listen, it's not been easy. Like,
but God bless her for coming to see you, right?
Coming to see me, almost it was through social media. It wasn't even something she's not like a paying client. She became a friend. She's someone I'm just helping out, but we communicate almost every day, but she's about to crack the 400-pound mark. Now, we got her down past 400 pounds, 360. She gained like 60, 70 back. Like it's a roller coaster. Like it's not like it's not always this slow, steady path of progress. Like you're going to have setbacks. I was on the phone earlier with one of my guys who I'm helping out also, who I met in May, 525 pounds, and he weighed in recently at 450. And more importantly, I don't care about the weight compared to this. He was walking 400 steps a day. I got an Oura ring on his hand. He's getting 6,000 steps a day. He's doing hour workouts 5 days a week. He's starting to walk on the motorless treadmill. He couldn't walk for 5 seconds on the motorless treadmill. Like those are things these are all non-scale victories. The weight and time is going to drop. The nutrition's been good. He's now logging on Chronometer. He was getting 2 meals a day now. Now we're adding in 2 shakes to get his protein up. Right? This is going to take time. This isn't this, every week we're going to lose X, Y, and Z. Like this is an emotional roller coaster. And, but you got to be patient and you got to understand that when you deviate off of it, you just got to get back on.
Are you aligned with our mutual friend, Gabrielle Line, who takes the approach of focusing on building muscle first, as opposed to like the fat loss piece?
I do believe in that. I am more in line with her. I do believe.
I guess you can approach both simultaneously, right?
You could. When you're working with someone like that, what am I doing? I'm trying to get them stronger. I'm trying to put muscle on. He couldn't handle me running him around in circuit style, and nor is that something I recommend someone to do all the time either. Like I like work capacity style of training. I like circuit work. I enjoy it. I also find that everyone I work with, including myself, tends to get weak in time. And I don't want to weaken the person. I want them stronger. I want them resilient. So I'll mix in little bouts of circuit training for like 3-4 weeks. I feel like we can still maintain a good level of strength. It's hard. It gets them moving. It gets them sweating. But I really like keeping the strength training and the movement work in one category and the cardio in another category.
What's like the first step? I mean, somebody presents to you with like a lot of weight that they need to lose. Maybe they have a background of they're sedentary.
Yeah, I've all the answers right now. I've been working on it with this guy, John Albuquerque, 5 months. I'm allowed to talk about this. We've been live about it, but he couldn't walk 400 steps a day.
Wow.
400 steps. I mean, that's what you walk to the bathroom all day long. He was getting 2 glasses of water a day at 525 pounds.
Wow.
So really the first thing I got him doing was moving. So he would show up to the barn 5-6 days a week, and we would literally walk inside the barn.
Just movement.
Just walking.
Yeah, walking.
And I would literally we would play music and we'd talk about music. That was it. That was my training plan for him, to the point where he went, and I logged everything. 10 minutes and 3 seconds was the most amount of walking he can do in one time. And when I say walking, I mean like it would be the equivalent of getting on a treadmill at 1.2, 1.5 miles per hour, like something where you could do for 10 hours straight.
Wow.
He couldn't do it for 10 minutes and 3 seconds. Now it's 6,000 steps a day. Now it's, and even the resistance training, we couldn't have him lay on a bench. What are you having him do for legs? Well, he's walking around with 400-pound weight vest on his back, in my opinion, right? It's, or maybe a little bit less, but I had to get him on the cable pulley system. So we're doing one-arm presses or bilateral presses on a cable and bilateral pulling, face pulls. A lat pull down, I had to wheel a bench in, have him sit on the bench because he's too big to sit on the actual pad. We would do some vertical pulling. He couldn't get into the machines. He couldn't fit in there. So you really, sure, biceps, triceps, side raises, all this isolation work that a lot of strength coaches are like, oh, it's nonsense. It's not nonsense. It's movement. We got a guy who couldn't move. That was his cardio. That was his way of walking in the beginning. Because that 10 minutes and 3 seconds on day one physically could not be 30 minutes. He would collapse. Wow. His knees would have gotten inflamed. His feet would have been killing him. He would have been laying in bed. So it's how do we add just that right amount of stress while I'm improving his water consumption and we're cleaning up his diet and we're showing those non-scale victories, steps, movement. And then in time, it's, all right, how many steps are you at? 6,000. A couple of days, he got to 7,000 north of.
Wow.
But, he got beat up from it. So we backed him off. So is it 10,000? I don't know if it's 10,000 steps. I don't know if it's 8,000, 9,000. I'm not too caught up on those numbers. I want more while his body can handle it, because not too many people at 500 pounds are walking around at 10,000 steps a day, right? So if we clean one up and his food's in a good place and his hydration's in a good place, good things are going to happen.
Dude, I struggle to get 10,000 steps a day.
It's a lot.
Living in Los Angeles, it makes it really hard for one.
It's a lot.
But yeah, that is.
You guys are driving all the time too.
All the time.
New York City's easy. When I was living in the city for 14 years, it's like, oh my God, like 15,000 a day easily.
It's insane. Like before noon, you've got like 8,000 steps living in New York.
Just walking to the subway alone is like, or running. Most of the time, I'm like, oh my God, the train's leaving in 15 minutes. And you're like running the LIR. So you're always getting, you're in good shape in that city.
Yeah, especially where I grew up in Murray Hill in New York City. I grew up in New York City.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
how long did you live there?
18 months, the first 18 years of my life. And then about 4 years ago, I was living there for like 5 years or 4 or 5 years, something like that. But
solid.
Moved back to LA like 4 years ago. But yeah, I mean, walking in New York City, it's like second nature.
Honestly, how do you like the adjustment? Do you miss the city at all?
There are, I mean, the walking aspect of it. Yeah. They're definitely, New York is like, I mean, it's the greatest city in the world, but living there is like, just getting anywhere is combat. So that's like both a blessing and a curse, I think, I value like having more space at this point in my life. Like I like in LA, you get more for your money in terms of like, housing. I like having a car. I enjoy having a car. I think that it's like fun. I like being able to like have the sort of like peace of like sitting in my car and not having to like elbow, the crowds and, getting on and off the subway. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, it's like quieter. New York, I just feel like, you could be walking on the sidewalk and without your consent, like every 5 minutes, an ambulance goes by stimulating your fight or flight. It's just like, it's an inevitably stressful place to live.
It is. And it's changed a lot. Like I was in on Wednesday and pollution's up and the homeless, it's up. Unfortunately, there's just people are like, oh, the city's back. I'm like, it's back on a different level. And I don't know, for me, it's, I've lived there most of my life. I mean, all my life, pretty much. I mean, I'm at least an hour outside the city. I mean, it kind of lost a little bit of that sexiness recently.
Yeah.
I used to love going in and going to dinner, and I'll still do it maybe once a month. And listen, I love New York, but it's changed a little bit.
Yeah. I like getting to go to New York and just like wear New York things, like jackets and peacoats and stuff like that you kind of look weird wearing in LA.
Well, yeah, it's also the weather here. I mean, it's 52 degrees right now, and everyone's like in ski jackets. It's like it's comical on the street right now.
Yeah,
it's
it's a different vibe.
It is.
But so when it comes to nutrition, like, do you obviously tracking has been helpful for you? Protein, food quality, is that something that you?
Yeah, huge. I'm a company I've been working with called Daily Dose. I'm very all farm to table. Seasonally, the menus change. I really stopped meal prepping. Fortunately, I've been doing that food pretty much every day. And if I go out to a restaurant, I go out to a restaurant. It's fine. I don't beat myself up over that unless I have like a shoot I'm getting ready for.
Yeah.
And I even have a restaurant or two in town that they accommodate for me what I want. Like my buddy Louie, who owns a restaurant called Robke's. He I walked in there during a muscle and fitness shoot. And he's like, I can't believe you're here eating right now. I was like, what do you need? I'm like, 7 ounces of salmon. He's like, I got you. I'm like, Steve whatever. I got you. Can you make me potato? Yeah, I got you. How many ounces? He's like weighing food out in for me. So yeah, it was really, really nice.
When eating out, what parameters do you think are helpful for people to use? You know, like, is it, like when like looking over a menu, like what should people like kind of like gravitate to?
Well, you know, I think first off is how have you been eating lately, right? Like what has your eating regimen been like? Because if you've been eating really, really well and you're really feeling good about your nutrition and where you're at, if you're going to a special spot, if you're in New York City, obviously has some of the best restaurants in the world, but you know, if you're going to a great Italian restaurant, like if you don't want to order the whitefish, don't tell them to steam it either. Like if I go to a restaurant like that, yeah, I'm going to order pasta, or yeah, I'm going to order something special that I normally wouldn't eat. So I want to first say that like, you got to live a little bit, but I also believe
how often you ordering pasta?
If I'm not training for something specific, I'm probably going off maybe one meal a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Totally fine. I mean, I got 2 kids, a 15 and 14-year-old. So we'll go to dinner and we'll have a fun dinner and we're always getting dessert after. And it's just like, whatever. But like, you got to dial it in. But yeah. I can't do that stuff. Like if I did it 3 nights in a row, I would feel awful mentally more. I'd be like, I won't enjoy it. Like I want to enjoy it. And the way I enjoy it is by sticking to my guns most of the time. And then when I'm in an environment like that, then I go off. But if you are out and you want to eat healthy, I mean, protein's always easy to get at a restaurant, right? So, basic proteins, like how's the fish? I mean, even if it's wild, if it's not wild, I mean, always prefer wild fish, right? Or some type of organic option, but you're not always going to get that. I think the hardest thing to order in a restaurant is a healthy carbohydrate, because carbs are normally mixed with like heavy butter or heavy oil. And what carbs do we really eat? Like rice, brown or jasmine rice, sweet potato. They don't serve sweet potato at restaurants. Like how often do you go to a restaurant? I mean, they do, but
how
often
rare.
you go? It's rare. Like you're not going to a steakhouse and like, oh, I'll have the sweet potato. Very rarely do you see that. They serve white potato, which, okay, fine. Like you can get it dry, no nutritional value, fine. Steakhouse, order a steak, order some vegetables, order the salad. Have a shake 90 minutes before you go out to dinner or 2 hours before, so you're not grabbing the bread basket and you're making better decisions. I think you got to ask yourself, what do you want out of this meal? If it's something where you want to stick to your guns and you want to stay on track because there's something you're training for or you just feel good about yourself, then those are good little tricks. I mean, I would always tell them, I'm allergic to certain things.
Yeah.
You
use that trick.
Yeah, use that BS.
I'm allergic to canola oil.
Allergic. Yeah, please hold this. Or, I was in the airport the other day ordering like a bowl, and I ordered no cheese and they put cheese in it. I'm like, I'm allergic to cheese. I'm so sorry.
The funny thing about like the canola oil thing is that nobody's allergic to canola oil.
Yeah,
it's just like,
I know. It's just so bad. It's just, one of those things. But
I usually play like I say I'm like not allergic, but I have like a preference. I like, eating gluten-free.
Yeah.
Just because like when you say that you're gluten-free, it generally will send the signal that you don't want to eat anything like fried or breaded or anything like that, which is just like it's a source of extraneous calories that you generally don't need,
100%. I use the gluten-free thing once in a while, but again, my body's, it doesn't do bad with gluten. So if there's a slip up once in a while, I'm okay with it. I'm not gluten intolerant, and do I feel better when I'm off of it? Yeah. But if I'm mixing one, like if I'm in the airport and they're ordering I'm ordering like a rice bowl, or if it's a burrito and they don't have bowls, like, all right, fine. I'm getting some white flour. I'm getting some gluten. Like I'll be okay with one day out of the month. Like I'm going to live. Right.
Yeah. No. I'm not like gluten sensitive or anything like that. And it's really just a preference.
Right.
But like, when I'm at a restaurant and I order a piece of fish and it comes and you could tell that there's like a coating of flour that's been put on it, I don't like that.
I don't like that either.
Or like if I order a salad and there, it says what's in the salad and they don't say that there's cheese, and then the salad comes and there's cheese on it.
That's my pet peeve.
I don't like that.
So that's my pet peeve.
Yeah.
You just nailed it. So at a restaurant, when they add ingredients to a dish and it's not listed, like you're going through this detailed. I still say when I order a salad, I still say there's no cheese on that, right? And they're like, no, or like, yes. Like I'll still say it because I've been burned so many times.
Yeah, 100%.
It's the worst.
I got home late last night because I was traveling and I ordered sushi from like a local restaurant. It was my first time ordering from there, and I ordered something and it said that it was like gluten-free, and it came and everything had like this like
drizzle on it,
drizzle of like soy sauce on it already, which like I didn't appreciate that,
Right. I mean, if I go to sushi, I actually like tamari. Sometimes I'll use that tamari it's
That's what I use. Yeah.
And it tastes like, I don't really taste much of a difference.
I don't taste any difference.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's just as good.
It's
So
fine.
yeah, I order sushi. I order it without any sauce on it. But this restaurant, it said that it was gluten-free. So I assumed that they weren't going to cover it with soy sauce. And it came and I was just like,
it's not gluten-free.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. I don't get
I
it.
know. I mean, I guess like it's nitpicking to a certain degree, but I just think that there should be like more transparency. I don't know. Maybe is that like the most privileged thing to say ever?
No, but it's true. I think you're ordering a dish and you should, if they're listing the items on the dish,
Yeah.
if they're putting something else on
I don't
it,
like surprises.
well, it's also false advertising, in a way, isn't it? I mean, it sounds terrible, but it really is.
Yeah.
It's not what you're saying that I'm buying.
Exactly.
I would not have bought that if it had cheese on it. If you said it was the only way I can have, I would not.
Yeah.
I just happen, I'm probably the only Italian on the planet that doesn't like cheese. I've never tried cottage cheese. I've never tried cream cheese. I've never tried sour cream. I've never even tried these things.
Wow.
It just grosses me out.
Wow. Interesting.
Even eating yogurt's like the consistency of it's a little gross. I don't know.
Interesting.
I'm weird.
But you like pasta.
Oh yeah, come on. Who doesn't like pasta?
Have you been to Italy?
Yeah.
Italy.
For my honeymoon, I went for my honeymoon
Oh, wow. Cool.
where we literally ate. Oh, by the way, perfect example. For 10 days, all I ate was pizza, pasta, gelato, had some fresh vegetables, drank wine at 2 meals a day. I think I lost 8 pounds.
Wow.
You know?
Everybody always says that.
I
Do you
lost
think
8
it's
pounds.
because like when you're traveling, you're just walking more and you're not in your kitchen? So it's like harder to.
I think there's several reasons. I think one, the portions they serve are not these huge. Even when you order a pizza, it's a little. Ben was just in Italy and he's posting these little pizza dishes. Like we get a pizza here, it's this.
Yeah.
I think that's one. I think also for someone like me, where I'm in such a, I'm consuming calories, right? Like if I'm consuming 4,200 calories a day or whatever the math is, probably even a little less. When I go on a trip like that, even the food I'm eating, it's probably still equating to less. And I'm in a short-term deficit. If I did that for 4, 5, 6 weeks, yeah, I'm going to probably start putting on body fat, but I could get away with it for a week and feel fine and retain some water and come home and sweat it out within 5, 6, 7 days. It's not a big deal.
You probably come back to your workouts even stronger, right?
Mentally, yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I think I'm going to take off the week of. I normally like training all the time, but I think when I'm snowboarding with my family, I'll take that week off to the New Year's.
I mean, snowboarding, you burn is massive calorie burn.
Just give you the mind a break and just eat some food and relax a little bit, and then you start back that following Monday, and you're just so motivated. I think.
Yeah,
it's helpful.
Love that. When I go to restaurants, I always go. I typically will like do like a steak or something, just because it's like, you're never gonna get a breaded steak. They generally don't use any oil to cook it.
Sometimes butter, but I don't even mind that as much.
No, I don't mind butter.
Yeah. Okay. What kind of steak?
Oh man. Well, I love a ribeye, but I feel like, I just feel like it's very easy to eat like 1,000 calories worth of ribeye, which is like, yeah.
Oh yeah. Porterhouse for 2.
Yeah. I'm super pro animal protein, and I think that red meat is like a health food. But I would be lying if I said that like eating a ribeye every night is like something that I think is good for. I think that there's a especially if it's not like grass fed, grass finished.
Totally fit.
You know what I'm saying? Because like a ribeye is a fatty cut, and if you're eating a ribeye at a restaurant every night of the week, you're eating most likely meat from a grain finished cow that has like an aberrant fatty acid profile because it's been fed a biologically inappropriate diet, right? If I was eating like a grass fed ribeye every night from like Butcher Box or something, or like one of these like grass fed, grass finished, farms, I'd feel good about it, right? But like when eating out at restaurants, I think probably the smartest choice is like a leaner cut, like a New York strip or like a filet mignon.
I love those.
Yeah, tenderloin or something like that.
I'll even do like a very high quality skirt steak. Gets a little fattier, it's a little thinner. My wife and I will throw that in the grill.
I love skirt steak.
Yeah, I like a little marinade on it. It's nice. So stuff like that. I probably eat red meat. I probably say 5 days a week.
Yeah, me too.
At least.
Yeah. 4 or 5, something like that.
Yeah, but like I'll mix bison in there. Like I'll mix some other things too that are a little leaner. Have you had bison?
Bison's good.
Yeah, I love bison.
Yeah. I've never had like a bison ribeye or anything, but I've had like ground bison. I've never had a bison steak.
I've had a bison steak. I don't like it as much as the ground bison.
Huh.
A buddy of mine used to make this bison chop steak.
Interesting.
So it was like literally hamburger meat, like in this big sick.
Damn, that sounds
Throw
good.
it into a bowl, rice, mixed vegetables, chop it all up for me. You own a restaurant.
But I will say, like, even a grain finished ribeye in the restaurant setting, it's probably going to be one of the best options on the menu. Like,
Probably.
assuming they don't have like a tenderloin, or maybe tenderloin's like cost prohibitive because filet mignons tend to be expensive. But like, you know, compared to like a farm raised piece of salmon, or you know, something breaded, or like a pasta dish, ribeye can be a great option. You know, it's like,
It's a great idea. You go with your protein, you go with heavy veggies.
yeah,
I don't see how you go wrong with that.
yeah.
People are against it. I mean, you get Dr. Gabrielle Line in here and she'll, you know her opinion on it. It is now, it's interesting. Now it's like suddenly, oh, actually, maybe red meat isn't that bad. And you're starting to see a lot of these publications put things out now.
Totally.
And I'm like, yeah, buddy, like it's.
No, dude, I think it's a health food. I mean, there's been this like, it's been really interesting to see at one point it was like the demonization of animal protein in its totality, right? Like there was one point where like eggs were bad, dairy fat was bad, animal protein was bad, right? But then we started to see that, oh wait, dietary cholesterol isn't really all that bioavailable. It doesn't really over the long term affect, you know, blood cholesterol levels. Eggs are fine, right? And then we started to see that fish, oh wait, fish consumption is associated with better health, right? It's not that fish doesn't have saturated fat in it,
Right.
or any of those like nutritional demons, right, that we've been told for so many years is not good for us. But now we know, wait a minute, it's actually better to eat fish than to not eat fish, assuming it's not fried.
Well, everyone's putting things in the same category. It's like all carbs are going into one category and all protein. Well, carbs are bad. It's like, all right, well, how's it prepared? Like that's chicken. That's deep fried. Like people still aren't putting two and two together. Like it's chicken. It's not prepared in a way that's healthy. It's just, I still don't understand how people are generalizing things. And
it's
like,
so dumb.
How are you comparing like mashed potatoes drowned in butter and all this garbage on it with a baked sweet potato that's dry? Like, how are you even comparing those two? Like,
I think it's because it's very convenient for the diet tribes to hyper focus on these singular nutrients, right? Or these singular compounds, right? Like the carnivores will do it with the so-called plant defense chemicals, right? They'll say that like it's the oxalates in the spinach or the polyphenols and the extra virgin olive oil or whatever, right? But the vegans, and they're just as guilty as the vegans who've done it for decades with like the dietary cholesterol and the saturated fat. The more I learn, the less inclined I am to want to demonize any single nutrient, because it's like, at the end of the day, I think food quality is what matters the most, and minimizing, you don't even have to cut them out completely, but just like minimizing the ultra processed crap, you know, the desserts, the sugar sweetened beverages.
I'll even say with desserts, like there's how is it made, right? Like a cookie can be made from ingredients that are actually nice ingredients. And it could be fed partially hydrogenated oils and canola oil and all this crap. Like if you're going to have the cookie, have it from high quality ingredients. And honestly, it tastes better anyway. Like you can't tell me like a chocolate chip cookie made from high quality ingredients. You know what I'm talking about too. Like good organic ingredients taste the same as some junky, you know, off the shelf supermarket cookie fed with, you know, a million ingredients. They just don't taste the same.
They don't taste the same. Yeah. You still got to be careful though, because I feel like even in your own house, you combine things a certain way that make them like, that give them that characteristic where like, you just don't want to stop eating them, you know?
Oh yeah. Cookies and ice cream.
Yeah. Like, have you ever had like,
that's what I do.
My friend Crosby Taylor makes these like keto grain-free cookies all the time. Right. But like,
still a cookie.
They're still, I mean, they're healthier, sure. But like, you put 5 of them in front of me, I'm going to want to eat all 5 of them.
Cookie's still a cookie. And I try, in all fairness, I try and eliminate that. Like when we go to eat that stuff, we just like get in a car. Like we're 3 minutes from the grocery store. So if I want something, I go, like I don't have it in the house. We leave stuff for the kids, but it's stuff that they want. It's not stuff I want. I never leave things in the house that I want to have that are like
smart,
that are like really delicious or binge worthy. I'll just be like, if it's a certain day and I'm like, honey, I'm going to go pick this up and I'm going to stop by Wild By and get, you know, a tub of organic chocolate chip ice cream and Tate's gluten-free cookies, which like I think are delicious. And
are those your indulgence foods?
Yeah, I kind of throw that. I'll have like a big burger or pizza or something, and then I'll always have like cookies and ice cream after or something like that. Just like eating like I'm going to the electric chair. It's amazing. But like, yeah, I don't keep that in the house because you just don't know. It's emotional eating. Maybe you're having a bad day. Maybe you miss a meal. You come home and you know you're not satiated and you're we get emotional about things. Sometimes we like to eat. Not that I don't trust myself, but I think the general pop has more of a problem with saying no than someone like me. Just part of what I do.
I think that's great advice. Just don't bring them into the house.
When you want it, go get it. When you want to get in your car and take a 5-minute ride to the grocery store and get what you want and eat it all. Don't leave any left. Like that's just my saying. It's like, just get it out of the house and you'll think twice about, all right, do I really need to have this now? Do I really need to go to the grocery store at 7:30 at night when I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock? And then out of nowhere, that's happened to me a few times in the past where like, if I had it there, I would have done it. But I was like, I'm not going out to get it. I won't have it.
Cause it's like, it puts a layer, like a barrier. Yeah. In between you and the ice cream and cookies.
You have to have these barriers. Yeah, you have to, especially if you're someone who wants better health. You just can't go and eat this stuff all the time. Sorry to break it to people. Yeah. I understand. Well, moderation. Well, what's moderation, right? It's most people, what they think of as moderation is what's holding them back from being able to have a higher level of success with their health and wellness. Like if you're picking your kids' chicken fingers every night and having a French fry and then having one drink, well, it's only one drink. It's only a glass of wine. Like, okay, you had one glass of wine tonight. You stole only one chicken finger from your kid. You had a handful of French fries from your other kid. And then you had a bite of dessert from your other kid. And like out of nowhere, this doesn't seem like a lot, but now you start adding up in this column of like crappy calories, of like useless calories, no nutritional value. Like your body's not utilizing it in a positive fashion. And when you add those up day over day, week over week, that's body fat. 100%. That's poor health. That's sleep quality diminishing. I'm more concerned with what this stuff does to my sleep than like a bad day of eating. Like if I have a bad night of eating, I'm not going to gain body fat from that. Like I'm not going to. Like if I'm sleeping, if I end up getting 4 hours of sleep because I'm waking up every hour to use the bathroom, or I feel like complete crap, and then the next day my energy's off and my lifting session's off, and I'm going into meetings and my face is all bloated. That's bad. That's like, all right, well, probably went a little overboard there, but I'm not worried about putting fat on in that one day. It's not going to happen.
Speaking of sleep, have you found that your diet affects your sleep?
100%. 1,000%.
Unpack that.
Well, I mean, let's start with timeliness of eating. So, I mean, I could be eating the right stuff, but maybe too close to bed. I used to think I could eat right before bed and I sleep fine. And then I start tracking my sleep quality and I start noticing that restfulness is off, or deep sleep is getting diminished. And I'm like, well, maybe let me try another tracker. Same thing, and then you start looking at signs pointing in the direction that even timing of your nutrition plays a big key, plays a big role. And also quality. Like if I sit there and I'm going to have like a binge worthy meal late at night, all right, like that might not affect my sleep quality in a good fashion. You never really know about this stuff until you really start doing it the right way. Like, it's like looking at the individual who's been drinking. I had a buddy of mine that drinks every night. Every night he goes out and he's a big foodie. He's a big wine connoisseur. And every night he's crushing at least a bottle of wine. Like, there's a problem here, right? There's, him and I have talked about this, but I'm like, hey, how do you feel on Saturday? And he's like, fine. All right. So then suddenly we got him to start backing off on the booze, and we actually had him for a few days not. And I remember him waking up and he called me. He's like, oh my God, I felt so good this Saturday. I'm like, dude, you didn't drink last night. And he just kind of went silent. He's like, oh my God, you're onto something. I'm like, no shit. Like, really? Like, it's just, but you don't know, when we're exposing ourselves to this environment, or we're exposing ourselves to this way of life, it's all you know.
Yeah.
So if you're eating ice cream every night and going to bed, how do you sleep fine? Or like, oh, I love this one. Oh, I can drink coffee before bed. Like I could sleep through anything. Like, well, can you? Like, you think you're sleeping. Like, what's your sleep quality like? Because when you go out and drink, and you've done it and I've done it, and you've had too many drinks, like, man, I was out, like slept 8-9 hours. Like, was it really good sleep? Was it restful sleep? Like, how's your face look the next morning? How are you feeling the next morning? You know a difference. I see and feel a difference.
Yeah.
So imagine doing that day in and day out, month in and month out for years. Look at some of these rock stars and you wonder why they look, 20 years older than they are. Like, they've just exposed themselves to this terrible environment. They never really gave themselves time to repair and recover.
100%. I stopped drinking I still drink, like, as I mentioned, like on occasion, but like, for I would say all of my 20s, I drank multiple nights a week, multiple drinks when I would drink. And, probably by my mid 30s is when I really like dramatically tapered back. And I feel like mid 30s is generally like there's like an escape velocity where if you're able to like curtail your drinking, obviously the earlier the better, and you're never too old to cut back and see benefits from that.
Mhm.
But I really feel like it was a boon to my health to cut back when I did, you know, like, because now at this age, you start to see, like, you really start to see people's like habits start to, like, you know, their life habits like start to emerge and manifest, you know, whether it's like the beer gut, the visceral fat in their faces, like the circles under the eyes, et cetera, you know?
Yeah, no, it pays a toll, right?
Yeah.
It's, you know, I went through the same thing. I think in my 20s, I was living in Manhattan by myself until I met my wife, probably 5 years solo in the city. I had my own apartment, was doing pretty well, was traveling all week long. We were like, you know, training, eating a certain way. And then Friday, Saturday night, you're in the city, you're going out, like we were hitting it hard. And Monday morning, you'd wake up, you'd feel like complete garbage. But at that age, it was literally one sweat. Tuesday morning, you wake up, you're back. Right now, I can have a night that's a quarter of that, and it takes me to probably Wednesday, Thursday. I just can't rebound and I can't recover. Yeah. And when you start waking up on those Saturdays and Sundays and you're like, oh my God, I feel good. Or like, I remember going and doing yoga Saturday night, or doing, you know, going home and watching a movie and showering, and you feel good and you have a healthy dinner and you wake up the next day and you feel accomplished. Like, especially for someone that's driven like yourself, who wants to continue to, you know, do well in life. Like, you can't live that life all the time. Once in a blue moon, okay, but it just doesn't fit.
Inevitably, you pay your tab.
Yeah.
Hey, if you like that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.
There's a million ways to train, by the way. So I don't have like one ubiquitous program, but I always try to prioritize the stuff that's most important in the beginning of the workout when you're fresh. So if that's a goal, then we do that in the beginning, and then we do the other stuff later.